Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News, joined as always by Travis Reier, the longtime analyst, senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. You can get Talkin Tide wherever you prefer to get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Live, Facebook Live. You can follow us on Twitter at Talkin_Tide. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow in those places, and you can follow along with Alabama football throughout the 2023 season with twice weekly podcasts right here from Talkin Tide. Want to quickly thank a couple of sponsors: Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa, Heat Pizza Bar in downtown Government Square in Tuscaloosa, and of course Caldera Men's Skincare. More on them a little later in the program. Travis, first I'll briefly apologize to our listeners. Our normal Sunday podcast didn't go off thanks to yours truly. I was all ready to rock in the fine meeting room at the Tampa Busch Gardens Hampton Inn Sunday afternoon before I had to before I had to go to the airport, and the Wi-Fi signal was a little wonky, and so we decided to just go ahead and pull the plug and do the recap podcast here on a Monday, Travis, which has thankfully afforded us the benefit of a little extra news, right? Because Nick Saban with a press conference around lunchtime, as he always does on Monday, and came straight with it on the quarterback situation. Travis, Jalen Milroe reinserted, reestablished, and back in the number one seed at that position after being the number 3 guy against USF.
Yeah, up and down week, to say the least, for Jalen Milroe. Came off that up and down performance against Texas. Sounds like, according to Nick anyway, didn't maybe respond to some of the plans that Nick had for the quarterback situation going into USF week. But listening to Nick on Monday, apparently Milroe checked some leadership boxes in not playing. But I think it was very telling. I think Nick Saban understands the rest of this team is looking at him right now and saying, or thinking, we're 3 games into this. We're going into SEC play. Who the hell is our quarterback, coach? And it's time to make a call. And Nick did have the benefit of seeing all 3 of these guys in competitive situations in 2 of the 3 games anyway. And so it's Jalen Milroe. Is it Jalen Milroe for the rest of the season? I think that's what Nick hopes at this point, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, what I wrote about following the news conference, Travis, was not so much the decision itself, because I think that was pretty plainly obvious. You don't have to be a football expert to know that after watching 3 games, Jalen Milroe is Alabama's best option. But the timing of it, definitely curious. We normally see, whether it's quarterback or offensive guard or any position, where there's a question as to who might be the starter. Typically what we see from Nick Saban is, well, we'll see how they practice, right? That's what he'll tell you on a Monday on such things most of the time. You might hear something from him on his Thursday night radio show that gives you a little clue. Maybe he says something pregame radio on Saturday. Maybe he says nothing at all. But in this case, he came right out with it on Monday. Didn't even wait to be asked. It was part of his opening statement. And I can't help but think, Travis, that this has something to do with the mindset, not only for Milroe, but the team too, to know going into this from the outset of the practice week that this is our guy.
Yeah, that wasn't an accident Monday that Nick unsolicitedly offered that up, because he was ultra tight-lipped with it right up through Saturday's game in Tampa. So he gets it from a team dynamic perspective. It's interesting though, because back in 2015, Ole Miss came to town for the SEC opener in Tuscaloosa, and Alabama was still unsettled. So maybe this is a learning experience that Nick had in going with Cooper Bateman in that game. Kind of messing around with that situation going into SEC play. You end up losing that game, but Jake Coker established himself on as the guy, and that team went on to a national championship. I'm not there yet with this team, though. If it were as simple as quarterback, maybe. But I think, as we're going to talk about, they've got other issues to deal with as well.
Yeah, they absolutely do, especially on the offensive side of the ball. One of our viewers asking now, is Ty Simpson the number 2 at this point, Travis? I think if you base it off the USF game, I think
Yeah.
you'd have to say he probably is.
Yeah, I think so. I think he handled the moment a little bit better than Tyler Buckner, which surprised me because I know it was kind of mop up duty against Middle Tennessee, but man, Buckner looked really confident, really capable in that performance in the season opener. So you figured that would translate into a start, but some nervy throws right out the gate. I thought Ty came in. He was a little bit unsteady himself, but in that fourth quarter, when that offense started to seem to be hitting its stride, mostly because of the run game, but he had the explosive play to CJ Dupree. I agree. I think right now you have to think it's Ty Simpson. And now, whatever you think of your number 3, maybe it's Dylan Lonergan that you move up a spot and start really trying to integrate him more into the offense and not so much from a scout team perspective week to week.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch as well. I think, obviously Buckner's run was weak to say the least. I think he had 5 possessions. They all ended in a punt. He did not look comfortable. There were accuracy issues for sure. He just did not look comfortable back there at all. I will say this: if there's one thing you can say about Tyler Buckner's performance, all 5 of USF's sacks came on Simpson, but Simpson isn't the only one that got heat, right? So Buckner definitely has, I think, an understanding, and probably a better understanding than, if we're just basing it off the USF game. Seems like he's got a real good understanding about getting the ball out quick when the pass rush is on top of him, right? Sometimes too quick, maybe, and sometimes maybe not to the right guy. But there was definitely a sense of urgency for Buckner to get the ball out that maybe we don't see so much from Milroe or Simpson.
Yeah, I think too. That might be the what if game of Tyler Buckner's Alabama career because second quarter he had a couple opportunities on some intermediate to deep throws, maybe a little bit late and underthrown to Isaiah Bond on that deep out route where they had some space. And then the post to Jermaine Burton where he just misses him. The ball in the air looks great. Looks like it's going to be a touchdown. Goes off the fingertips of Burton. So yeah, I think you will. Probably a lot of people won't think about it much. I won't. But when you think about that performance, what if, especially the deep ball to Burton, if he hits that one, does that settle him? Does it settle the offense? Who knows where they go from there?
Offensively for Alabama, we'll go ahead and expand it out. Take a look at this USF game, Travis. Obviously, it was a disastrous performance by the Alabama offensive line. They did manage to pull it together as a run blocking unit toward the end of the game. But in what should have been a get right game, there's no other way to describe it than a mess. And one of the things that struck me, and this is, this isn't just the offense, this is overall. But to win that game by 2 touchdowns is pretty remarkable. You wouldn't know it was a 2 touchdown win for either team if you'd have looked at some of these team stats, Travis, just to run down how close things were. All right, you first downs 16-14, Alabama's favor. Total offense 310 to 264, Alabama's favor. But what was that before Roydell Williams ripped off a 48-yarder at the end of the game, right? I mean, that was basically even until the very end. Sacks, 5 each. Penalties, 5 each. Fumbles, lost, 1 each. Third down conversions, Alabama, 5 of 15, USF 5 of 17. I mean, this game in a lot of pretty important, by the way, time of possession almost dead even too. I think TOP was within 30 seconds of being even. So in every respect, this game, while it might not should have been tight at all, it was very much so.
Yeah, by the numbers, but again, Alabama had some opportunities. The deep ball to Burton that they missed on by just inches. You lost a kickoff return to a touchdown on a penalty with Terry and Arnold. So it just, I know the score was close and the numbers were close. I never felt like Alabama was threatened in the game, but then I look up with about 6 minutes to go. USF is only down 7 with the ball inside the Alabama 45, right?
Right.
So it just didn't have the feel, and that's how you lose games. I get it. You kind of go through them thinking, we'll be okay, and then the next thing you know, you're either down a field goal or you're going into overtime and you're reeling now. So it was one of those kind of games. I know Nick, based on his comments Monday, hoping that there's carryover, especially with that run game. I think there needs to be that, or you're going back to Milroe in large part too, because when you talk about explosive play capability and potential, I think we saw in his 2 starts that it's a good bit greater with him than it is with either Buckner or Simpson. Simpson did a nice job against USF. 2.5 quarters of action. He had 1 run of 10 yards or more, and he had 1 completion of 15 yards or more. You look at Jalen's numbers, those turnovers are problematic, no doubt about it. But if you want to talk about explosive play ability and scoring ceiling for this offense, I don't see how you don't go back to Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. Milroe can make the big play. I think we've seen his deep ball enough to know that he can be dangerous with that, and obviously he's dangerous with his legs, which leads me to the fact that he's also the best choice, Travis. If your pass protection is a mess as it is at this point for the Crimson Tide, you need as much escapability as you can get at that quarterback position. And Milroe is clearly better than Buckner or Simpson in that regard. He can turn a potential sack into a positive play, and sometimes a hugely positive play when he just tucks it and goes. And so I think if you're Alabama and you factor that in as well, this was definitely an easy decision.
I think so. But, I also think my thoughts on how you're going to utilize Jalen Milroe in this offense haven't changed based on today's news. Because Nick Saban was adamant about what he said today, that doesn't make me think Jalen Milroe is any closer to being Bryce Young than he was before today. And I get it. In comparison to Buckner and Simpson, as far as explosive playability, both as a passer and a runner, he's shown to be more of that guy. I still think, though, they have got to maintain a run threat with him on almost every snap if they're going to maximize his effectiveness. If you're Pete Golding this week, you're hoping that Alabama leans on Milroe to be more like Bryce Young than, say, Jalen Hurts from 2016. You would love that to be the case.
Yeah, this offense has got to play downhill as much as it can, Travis. Power, they got to do more in the running game. There's no question about that. I think there's potential for that, right? I don't know what the potential is with the pass protection. It could be problematic all season. I do think this offensive line can do better, and it's worth noting that one of their very best players, Tyler Booker, was out for that USF game with back spasms. I do think they can run the ball better. They've got to do that, and Milroe's got to be a part of that, right? Design runs, whether it's the read option stuff, I don't care, but he's got to be involved.
Every play, he has to be a threat. Straight drop backs and things like that, unless it's the quick game and you already have a predetermined read where he goes with the ball or takes off, I don't want to see any more empty. I don't want to see 5-man protections from this team. They struggle with 7 and 8-man protections against USF.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. They have to, for them to come close to sniffing Atlanta in early December, they have to reach their full potential as a run offense. And in part because this offensive line is so massive that if they are in obvious pass situations, even with some help, you got guys getting beat by quickness and speed and athleticism. All these numbers and these comparisons to NFL offensive line sizes, they don't mean nothing if you can't run the football. Yeah. Because the other side of that is you're probably not going to be as good in obvious passing situations if you're in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and it requires time for routes to develop. And the quarterback needs to be able to sit in there for 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. This group has shown you zero in the way of the ability of sustaining that. And that's with Tyler Booker. And I understand they are better with Tyler Booker. But, Terrence Ferguson's been around for 3 years now. That wasn't another true freshman they plug and played with on Saturday. And it's not just Terrence Ferguson Saturday that was their issue. And they continue to have issues along the offensive line. And then in pass protection, tight ends at times are a little leaky. running backs at times are a little leaky. So, yeah, that drive there in the, I guess, late third into the fourth, where they got Dupree going and then they got Roydell going. That's who they've always needed to be. And then attach the quarterback to that with the threat of both run and pass.
To one of your points, I texted a buddy of mine from the airport in Tampa on Sunday, and I told him, I said, they ought to just rip everything in the playbook from the empty set, just rip it out, and don't even look at, unless maybe it's a quarterback draw.
Yeah.
Short of that, I don't know why you'd call anything with an empty set at this point, because they just
when they
cannot
motion the back out and go empty, there's an audible gasp, in the words of Patterson Hood.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And talk about pinning your ears back, when you see that as a defense.
Well, and the guy Evans for South Florida Saturday, props to him. He had a big game, but he was never concerned about the quarterback run until Ty kept it off his own read, and they caught Evans inside, and Ty was able to pick up 6 or 7 yards there in the fourth quarter. And you got to keep these defenses balanced, man, especially when you have a guy that can do it.
No question. All right. Kind of lost in all this, Travis, was an outstanding performance by the Alabama defense. Gave up 3 points against the South Florida Bulls. Carried the team on a day when it needed to be carried by somebody. The defense stepped up to that task. They ended up getting a lot of plays in the backfield, 5 sacks. Dallas Turner, an especially big game. I think he had 2.5. You commented, I think, in the midweek or last week ahead of this South Florida game that you expected to see Alabama, which didn't do anything to Texas in terms of negative plays, kind of turn that around against US and be disruptive in the backfield, especially in pass rush. We definitely saw more of that.
Yeah, we did. Again, as we talked about last week, I mean, Florida A&M had 13 tackles for loss against USF and 6 sacks. So, if you don't kind of hit 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss and you're Alabama, you're going to be a little concerned. But they did what they needed to do. And I thought, as much as anything, the intensity was good from the opening snap. It felt like the defense took some ownership, some accountability for, okay, we understand that the quarterback situation and the offense might be a bit of a wreck right now. We're okay with that. We'll carry things until those areas can get up to speed. So that was good to see. And they were able to do what they needed to do and contain Brown enough. Although you still had a couple of those 3rd and long, 2nd and longs that drive you crazy where he breaks contain. And I think it's getting to the point, similar, Chase, to the quarterback situation, that inside linebacker spot opposite Deontay Lawson need to get that figured out. I don't know how long you can keep going with playing 3 guys. I don't see that as being beneficial to the defense as a whole.
I don't either. Definitely when Brown decided to go ahead and break for it, Alabama had trouble containing him. There were a lot of missed tackles in that regard. Maybe caught some guys caught out of position. He was able to convert a couple of big first downs. Probably not the greatest game for Jihad Campbell, certainly at one of those linebacker positions. And so he and Marshall, you may see that thing settle into one guy pretty soon. I think you're right. I think it might benefit the team if so.
Yeah, and understanding Jihad had an injury, going into the season that he's still trying to work through. So perhaps if that hadn't happened, he would be the guy, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. But I thought the defensive line was fine. It kind of is what it is, especially without Jaheim Otis. It was good to see some young guys get some opportunities. James Smith had a big fumble recovery, and in a game in which you expected your edge guys to have big games, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Quindarius Robinson, I thought they all did that.
All right, the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network. Going to thank a couple of sponsors here really quickly. Going to start by telling you all about Heat Pizza Bar in downtown Tuscaloosa, recently named by the Alabama News Center as one of the top pizzerias in the entire state. Also, a favorable rating from Dave Portnoy, the Barstool Sports mogul, dropped in on Heat a couple weeks ago had a positive review as well. And, Frank Fleming's staff over there just does a great job, not only with the pizzas, but the salads, the appetizers. They've got a full bar over there, super atmosphere, easy parking as always. It's right there where the public parking garage is in Government Square. You can't beat it. And they've got some daily specials too, including that Thursday special from 2 to 6 p.m. You can get a pepperoni pizza for just $8 and $3 off on cocktails between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. Downtown Government Square. Remember, it's Heat Pizza Bar.
Going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Sweet 16, Peterbrook Chocolatier. You got a home game weekend coming up. You got that tailgate. You got that watch party. They're all incomplete without Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa. They can do the party trays now. They can do chocolate pizzas for you. They can do those chocolate footballs. Make Peterbrook Chocolatier the hit of your game day get-together, party, tailgate, you name it. It's Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hill section of Tuscaloosa.
Finally, going to tell you about Caldera Men's Skincare, available now to our listeners at a discount with the promo code TIDE. Just go to calderalab.com/Tide and get a 20% discount. Now, if you live in Alabama, the sun can be awful hard on your face. You got to take care of it. I've been working with Caldera here over the last several weeks since they sent Travis and I a package of 4 products. One of them, the Clean Slate, of course, is an outstanding morning cleanser. They've got a base layer that's more of a moisturizer. They've got the Icon for those bags under the eyes, and the Good. They work together as a team. It's an outstanding line of products. Check them all out at calderalab.com/Tide. And again, Caldera offering 20% off to our listeners with the discount code TIDE, TIDE. Once again, it's calderalab.com/Tide. All right, Travis, before we close things out here on the program, a look back around the Southeastern Conference. Definitely the big game, Florida and Tennessee. The Vols go down to Gainesville. And the Swamp just does something to those Vols, Travis. It's a tough place for them. And they got upset. Really a signature win for Billy Napier, his biggest win yet. I don't think there's any question about it. And one that Billy Napier absolutely needed in terms of the capital he's got with that Gator fan base.
Absolutely, especially when you're writing that platform of program builder, which is all well and good. And Napier, by all accounts, especially when looking at this 2024 class, in a great spot on the recruiting trail. But you still got to be able to mix in a game or two of hope for the fan base that keeps them going between the recruiting classes. And that's exactly what he got Saturday night. Graham Mertz, you talk about transfer portal guys, been huge for Florida coming in at the quarterback position, but it's still largely about the improvement that team's made on the defensive side of the ball. How about Austin Armstrong, the brief linebackers coach at Alabama, now the DC at Florida, doing some good things. And then those running backs, that tandem that Florida has in the backfield with Etienne leading the way, very dynamic in that regard.
Fisticuffs toward the end of that one. We heard about some suspensions come down right before we went on the air here, Travis. The SEC announced that 4 or 5 guys, most of them, I believe, Gators, are going to be sitting out a half. As it turns out, both teams are going to be taking on non-conference foes this coming week, where the suspension losses likely won't be missed. But hey, when guys start dropping gloves out there, Travis, and looking like Mike Tyson on each other, that could be fun.
Yeah, I did get a little chippy there at the end. I think Heupel was using some timeouts or something, and it's like, get the game over, man. It's over. Get on the bus, go to the airport, back to East Tennessee.
LSU absolutely blasted Mississippi State in Starkville. Georgia got by South Carolina by 10. Once again, Travis, and this isn't the first time we've seen this year, the Bulldogs came out kind of flat, and things were looking really hairy with the Gamecocks at halftime, but pulled it together in the second half and got it done.
They did. Methodical, reminiscent again of Alabama of old. Even when Alabama in years past would come out a little bit on the flat side, maybe not prolific offensively, that war of attrition eventually takes over against a team like Georgia, and they end up outscoring South Carolina 21-0 the rest of the way. So that was relative to a lot of the teams coming up on Georgia's schedule. That was a hurdle, although the cocktail party looks a little bit bigger after that
Yes,
Florida win over Tennessee.
no doubt about it. All right, before we get out of here on the Talkin Tide podcast, going to give that Too Deep tumbler a quick spin, see who comes out of it. The tumbler, as we have learned, Travis, has a way of springing names
Goodbread's got his
that
safety goggles on.
we've talked
It's
about.
attacked by the tumbler.
There we go. Well, we're pulling number 22. That would be Justice Haynes, the freshman running back for the Crimson Tide, who, as we know, Travis, was pretty well hyped along with Caleb Downs as one of the top early enrollers in spring practice. Really haven't seen a lot of them so far this season. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to work his way into the rotation, but so far not so much.
I think he can pass protect, so that alone should put him in the mix. And you know what else? We didn't talk about the snuff of that USF fake punt to this point. And Justice Haynes was right in the middle of that on the punt return team for Alabama. I thought Malik Benson, Quandarius Robinson, and Justice Haynes did a nice job on that play. Justice Haynes looked like a legit defensive player. He got his head across to the outside on making that tackle. So, I think he's going to eventually surface. I mean, if anything, injuries tell us in the past that you're going to need more than 2 or 3 guys, and I think he's capable enough as it is.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast. Want to thank our viewers and listeners. Be sure to check us out again a little bit later in the week when we preview Alabama's upcoming home game against the Ole Miss Rebels. Until then, we'll talk to you next time right here on Talkin Tide.